Hey, it's Glenn, and every year I like to try to add something new to my little YouTube channel to keep it fresh, um, to keep me from getting bored, I guess, too, which hasn't happened yet. Um, and this year, I thought it would be cool because I try to find something that is genuine to myself. Um, and this year I want to do a new series called The Books I Love. And, bear with me while this little series tries to find its legs and its voice. Because I think what I want to do with it is, I'm not going to do book reviews. I'm not going to spoil books for you. It's going to be more about my personal relationship with a book. Why I love this book, why I connected with it, why it resonated with me. So there may be some spoilers. Of course, I have to tell you maybe something about the book, but I'm not going to try to get in depth into the quality of the book or the details of the plot so much as I'm going to talk about why this book matters to me. So for the first episode, I want to talk about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. This book, and the thing is, I know a lot of people have read this book, a lot of people know this book and love this book. It's a very small book. I mean, at most it's a novella. And I appreciate short books. You may, if you read my books, you'll know that I write some short books, and that's gonna be a theme you're gonna find in some of these. Like there's a book I've planned which all the books I'm gonna talk about this year, and a couple of them are very short books, and that's part of their power for me. So I like a book that gets to the point. So Jonathan Livingston Seagull gets to the point and does so with so much power. But my Jonathan Livingston Seagull story is, back when I was probably in my early 20s, my friend Gabe and I used to haunt the Adelia Branch Library in Dallas, and I discovered so many things there. He discovered so many things there, and we would share. Like, I would always, that's what we did. Like, we'd read books and comics and then switch and read each other's stories. We'd read each other's favorite stories or things that we discovered that we thought were great. And that started because he wanted to borrow the Star Wars novels from me, and it just went crazy from there. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I don't know why he picked it up. Neither one of us had any idea that this was a famous, best-selling book that had come out, and it came out, I think, in 1971. I want to say 71. But sometime in the early 1970s, this book was all the rage, and I had no clue when I read this book. All I know is Gabe said, "Read this," after he found it at the library, and I did, and I loved it. So basically this book is about a seagull. Imagine that. And his name is Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and he lives his little seagull life, and they fly around, they scavenge, they just do their little things, but he is really into flight. He's really passionate about flight, and everybody thinks he's weird. Everyone's like, well, you just relax, dude. Just eat some fish and shut up. Stop trying to fly higher and faster than everybody. It's idiotic. It's a pointless waste of your time. Your passion is a pointless waste of your time. Conform. Be like the rest of society. Just conform to the social norms. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull gives no fucks. He flies higher and faster. Like, that's his whole thing. He does not care about conforming to society. He's irritated by everyone getting on him. And I don't want to give spoilers because I really do want you to read this book. But to me, like, this book was about following your passions. It was about being true to yourself, no matter what society has to say about it. And it was about spirituality. It was about the purpose of being. It was just so incredibly profound. It's amazing that it all fits into the short little book that it is. All of the points and the philosophy and the story of this seagull. And so after I read this book, I was just greatly inspired. I don't think I would be a novelist if I hadn't read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. If I hadn't read a book that connected with me on a spiritual and intellectual level like this one did, that was illustrating the power of following your own drummer, of doing the thing that everyone says you cannot do, of trying, of improving yourself. And when you're weak, you grow stronger. When you hit a wall, you evolve. You reinvent yourself. And like, I actually get kind of choked up and emotional talking about this book, which is surprising to me. But not, I mean, now that I think about it, it's not, because it's a very emotional story. It's a very, very powerful tale. And I keep it kind of in my mind and heart always, this sort of guiding light that encourages me to keep following my dreams, to keep being me, to not sacrifice my light for anyone or anything, to keep trying to fly higher and faster because I'm passionate about those things. So, so after I read this book, not only that, but I had to read everything the author, Richard Bach. I haven't mentioned the author. When I get more formulaic about this series, I'll probably tell you who wrote a book right up front. Richard Bach is one of my all-time favorite authors, because this isn't the only book he wrote that greatly inspired me, that encouraged me to follow my own path and to question and to seek and to learn and to grow in everything I do. I highly recommend not just Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but everything that Richard Bach has ever written. He's an amazing author. I would love to sit down and have coffee with this dude at some point. That would be amazing. That would be just, I don't know, I think I just love to, there's probably all of my favorite authors. I would love to just sit down and have coffee with them and just talk about stuff. Just talk about the world and pick their brains. But Richard Bach is right up at the top of the list for me. One of them. Like, I would have a hard time saying who my one true favorite author is, just like I would have a hard time saying what my one true favorite book is. Even when looking at my own books that I've written, I don't know how I could say, oh, this one is my favorite. But Richard Bach and Jonathan Livingston Seagull are definitely on the list of my favorites. I have never felt disappointed after reading a Richard Bach book. And one cool thing, if you're gonna read this book, I very much recommend you read the complete edition. Because for decades, you had one version of this book that everyone read. The version that took off in the 70s. But several years ago, I don't know exactly what year, I want to say it was in the mid to late 20-teens, he found it, well, his wife, I think is the story, his wife was in the attic and found a box with the original manuscript in it, and she picked it up and started going through it and realized it didn't end where the published book ended. There was a whole other chapter that he had decided at the time was too much for people. Like, it was just too much. And only Richard Bach could correct me on this, but she took it down to him and said, read this. And he was like, why would I read that? I wrote that. And she's like, no, I really think you should read this. And so he did, and he realized what I realized after reading the complete edition, is that this should have always been the way that the book ended. It takes nothing away from the original edition. All it does is add another incredibly profound layer to the whole thing. So I highly recommend get yourself a copy of the complete edition of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. That's what it's called. And just take note that, because when I loaned this book to Matt, and he has it right now, he loved it when he read it. Like, everyone I've loaned this to several friends, and they've all loved this book. It's resonated with everyone. Matt even put words from this book on the program at his father's funeral, because his father was reading this book when he passed away last year. And I don't remember where the bookmark was, but I remember that Matt thought that it was a very profound place for his father to have set a bookmark for the last time in his life. And there are so many places in this book where you could leave a bookmark and open it up and say, wow, that's a profound place to leave a bookmark. But yeah, so that is pretty much my relationship with the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull. That is why I love this book and this author. And I cannot recommend it enough. So that's what you're going to see in this series. You're going to see me gushing about books and telling you how I discovered them and how they impacted me. I'm not going to be talking about any books I dislike in this series at all. So if you don't like all the toxicity out there on the internet these days, this is the place you want to be. And if you want book recommendations, again, this is the place you want to be. So get yourself a copy if you will, and I'll be back in the next episode with another book to gush about and hopefully talk you into reading it. So until next time, you can find me and all of my books and videos and podcasts at glensladeclarkjr.com, which is my author website. And if you've read this book, please leave a comment down below the video and let me know your relationship with this book, even if you don't like it. Like, I'm interested in having discussions about the books that I'm passionate about. I don't require anyone to feel the same way as I do about them. I would just love to hear your opinions on these books that I'll be talking about. So I hope to hear from some of you about this book, and whether I do or not, I will see you next time with equal enthusiasm.